I knew something was wrong the second the barcode scanner gave a low hum instead of the usual crisp beep. It was 4:45 a.m., and even the machine seemed uneasy. I was 2 sips into my burnt diner-grade coffee. No syrup, no foam, just the kind that tastes like litigation. Region 3's overnight queue had stalled. Warehouse in Dallas was lagging by 18 seconds. And in freight logistics, 18 seconds might as well be a blowout on I-10. By 5 a.m., I was live on all 3 terminals, load metrics, left diagnostics, center security flags. Right? Somewhere in those pixel grids was my pulse. I'd spent 22 years building the system. They called it Chimera, and I was its keeper. I designed it. I fed it. I patched it through ransomware scares, hurricanes, and 4 COOs who thought Slack channels solved everything. Then came the scan my retina. Not for ego, for protocol. My protocol. And before I go on, if you've listened this far and you're part of the 97% who haven't subscribed, now's the time. Likes and clicks keep stories like this caffeinated. Back to the morning. That scan, it was the ghost key. A deep, buried failsafe only I could trigger, built after the 2012 breach no one dares mention. Don't ask it involved a Romanian botnet and mislabeled adult toys. No one else had clearance or guts. Each morning, that scan reauthorized over 2,400 subroutines, every handshake, every heartbeat of America's 9th largest freight network. No scan, no movement. Simple. But people forget who bled for the system. I wasn't on holiday cards. I didn't schmooze. I was the woman in ops with mechanic's hands and a stare that could reset a router. And I liked it that way. Precision without permission, power without applause, power without ceremony, but that morning felt too smooth. Region 2's cold chain updates lagged, then self-corrected before I touched a key. That only meant one thing: someone had poked around. The signature was clumsy, like a LinkedIn intern trying to code in Python using ChatGPT. Carson. I'd bet my last chipped coffee mug it was him, nepotism's golden boy with a haircut from 2011 and a mind like spilled toner. I checked my access logs. Still active, still top tier, no flags. That told me everything the wolves thought the shepherd was asleep. Thing is, wolves get cocky until one finds a bear trap. I finished my coffee, ran a final manual calibration, something Carson and his dashboard jockeys didn't even know existed, and leaned back. They thought I was just a system admin. Wrong. Sun rose outside like it wasn't about to watch a massacre. Then came the ping, upcoming organizational realignments. I didn't click it. Didn't need to. Realignment means you still want the thing. They didn't want me. Good. Let's see what happens when the woman who is the system walks out and doesn't disarm the landmine behind her. The conference room smelled like lemon disinfectant and denial. I knew it was a setup when I saw 3 water bottles already placed on the table. 1 bottle means courtesy. 3 means legal coverage. The VP sat stiff eyes glued to a legal pad like it might save him. Carson slouched in the corner, scrolling like a teenager at jury duty. I gave him a nod. He smirked like this was his big win. Then she spoke. The consultant. All veneers and buzzwords. Maggie, thanks for coming in early. Just wanted to align on some strategic pivots. If that sentence gave you a headache, try hearing it before sunrise with no bourbon. She kept talking. Redundancies, efficiency, forward-facing posture. Like I was a dusty fax machine, not the artery keeping their $3 billion beast from stroking out. I didn't speak, didn't blink. Just watched as the consultant slid a branded folder across the table, like she was handing me a discount coupon for a hotel spa. My name was misspelled on the front. That was the cherry on top. We'll be parting ways. Effective immediately, she said, like she was reading the lunch menu and the salmon was out. Sure, I'm sure there's a generous severance inside, I muttered, cracking the folder. Carson finally looked up, not in shame, triumph. Like this was his coronation. Like cutting me loose handed him a throne. Maggie, he said, adjusting his lapel. No hard feelings. You've built a strong foundation. Time to scale. Scale, honey. You couldn't scale a curb without tripping over your ego. I felt the heat rise in my jaw. Years of migraines 3 a.m. crisis, calls the weight of a $3 billion network pulsing through my veins, and still I didn't flinch. Just nodded, signed, and closed the folder. The VP never looked up. "We'll need your badge and company phone," the consultant chirped. "You can clear your desk or arrange for pickup. Whatever's easier. No escort, no cupcakes. Just a drafted HR email waiting to go out with my name stripped from the CC. I stood. Carson was already back on his phone, probably updating his LinkedIn bio, excited to lead digital transformation. New chapter. Blessed. But here's the part they missed. No one deactivated my credentials. Sure, they took my badge and turned off the door, but the root access, the soul of the entire system, still mine. Every handshake, every legacy cron job, still breathing with my digital fingerprint. You can't erase what you never understood. I walked past security without a word. The elevator music mocked me. The front desk guy gave me a sad nod like I'd been handed a terminal diagnosis. Out in the parking lot, I sat for a while. Folder on the seat, one hand on the ignition. The other logging into the company VPN. Still green, still live. I stared at the status bar. Everything humming. That's when the rage began to hum back. Low, controlled, like a generator kicking on in the dark. They hadn't asked for a handover. Didn't fake concern. They just assumed the veins of their empire would keep pumping like the heart was some replaceable battery. Like I was the janitor. Like you could rip out the engine and expect the plane to fly. I went home, poured a drink, logged into my mirror terminal, my private admin console untouched since the 2012 ransomware scare. Quiet, legal, off-grid. The failsafe, still live. The system needed my scan again at 8:00 a.m. Sharp, or it would lock down tighter than Fort Knox during a bomb scare. I closed my eyes. I wouldn't be there. The ice clicked inside my glass like a countdown. I sat in my kitchen, the one I tiled by hand after the divorce, watching bourbon swirl like stormwater in a drain. The afternoon light split through the blinds like prison bars. Fitting, given the digital trap I was about to lock. My tablet buzzed. One notification, admin, heartbeat, confirmed system green. The network I built nurtured and guarded like a junkyard dog, still humming. Still clueless, like a pup wagging at the butcher holding the blade. Some tiny part of me almost sent a warning. Just a nudge. Hey, geniuses maybe? Double check your critical dependencies before handing root clearance to a walking TED Talk. But then I pictured Carson's face. That smug, undercooked grin. Like he thought firing me was a mic drop for mankind. The way he said scale like, it was something he could spell without spell check. No. Let him trip. I took my drink to the den. Sat at the old walnut desk I'd refinished during the 2050 back-end outage. Booted my diagnostics mirror, a bypass terminal, wired to the bone. There it was. The rhythm. The Empire's pulse. Next biometric scan required 07-59-59. Just like always. Ever since the day a clueless intern nearly rerouted 1,000 pallets of medical PPE to a Chuck E. Cheese in Reno. That was when I embedded the fail-safe, quiet, elegant, invisible. But deadly. A single retinal scan mine was required each morning to keep the system's backbone alive. Missed the window and the fail-safe kicked in. Lockdown engaged, no truck codes processed. Gate relays, dead. Vendor contracts suspended midstream. Forklifts, soft-bricked, the grid froze like a corpse in January. Back then, I warned one person, Greg, our old CTO. Guy wore pleated khakis like a badge of honor and called me kiddo, even though he was 5 years younger. He retired in 2017 after a mild heart attack and a scandal involving stock options and an accidental offshore account. No one else knew, especially not Carson. That boy couldn't locate his own earlobe without a GPS and a flashlight. I stared at the blinking prompt scan required 08-E-O-0-0-0-0, just like every day before. Only this time, I wouldn't be there. If you're ready to see what happens when the architect becomes the strategist, go ahead and subscribe. The next move is already in motion. This time, I was the ghost in the machine. And the worst part wasn't the severance. It wasn't the folder with my name misspelled. It was the assumption that I never mattered, that I was just there. A living sticky note. Replaceable. I took another sip. I could have scanned in, kept it breathing, but then, what fade into the background while Carson played CEO cosplay? Let them roll out their PR video and LinkedIn hashtags. No. I powered down the mirror. Let it blink in the dark. They wanted strategic reallocation. Let's see how they handle a full-blown logistical stroke. At exactly 8:01 a.m., the nervous system of a $3 billion empire collapsed into silence. No sirens, no flashing red lights, just stillness. In Toledo, forklift drivers turned their badges and waited. Machines blinked, then died. In Phoenix warehouse, gate number 3 pulsed red as drivers pounded on biometric pads that no longer recognized them. Down in Georgia, frozen stock began to thaw in the humid sun compliance timers, blinking into red zone oblivion. From coast to coast, the arteries of American freight seized up. And Carson, he was probably in some glass conference room, still breathing easy clueless. The air conditioning still worked, but their inventory didn't. Carson strutted into the office that morning with a peppermint latte and a mission to synergize data silos. Bless his buzzword-filled heart. 50 minutes later, he was pacing like a hamster on a caffeine drip. 2 junior sysadmins sat nearby, rubbing their temples, muttering about DNS poisoning and firewall misalignments. They restarted the backend, rebooted every internal tool, unplugged the main router like it was possessed. Still nothing. Dashboards refused to load. Access logs returned blanks. Every warehouse node displayed the same elegant message, authorization key expired. Seek master root clearance. Of course, no one had a clue what that meant, because I never used cheap error codes. I wrote everything in my own dialect, only I could read it fluently. Let them Google that. Meanwhile, I sat in my flannel robe, sipping reheated coffee from last night, lukewarm, bitter, perfect. My diagnostics mirror buzzed like a smug little snake. Bound report, Node 06B forklift failure. Inbound Node 11C gate, non-responsive. Timeout vendor queue, region 2. They just kept coming, a rhythmic cascade of silent collapse. I didn't lift a finger. Months ago, I wrote a script. Hidden, masked, immune to patches. It routed anonymized error logs straight to my private console. Legal. Technically. Smart without question. I'd seen what happened when your life's work got trapped behind a corporate firewall. Mine wasn't going down with their ship. I leaned back smiling in that dry, half-lipped way only revenge can coax from a woman who's been underestimated too long. Vendors were the first to notice. By 8:15 a.m., calls flooded the switchboard. At first confused, then irritated, then full-blown furious. Contracts had SLA clauses, hourly penalties. Miss a window and the bleeding started fast. I watched it unfold like a train wreck in slow motion. Slack was glitching. Alerts were scrambled. And through one of my legacy syslog pings, I still had a front row seat. They weren't fixing a system. They were panicking over a heartbeat they didn't realize was gone. At 9:00 a.m., someone pinged Carson with a message I'll never forget, who has Maggie's last access tokens. Bless their sweet, naive hearts. As if I'd leave anything lying around. My offboarding left no skeleton key, no handoff, no trail. Not even the new CTO knew where the failsafe was buried. Greg had retired before I finalized the last build. All they had now was a blinking network and a mountain of unprocessed purchase orders. Back in my kitchen, I muted the console and looked out the window. Birds gathered at the feeder. A mail truck rumbled by. A dog chased a squirrel with more hope than strategy. And somewhere in glass towers and server rooms, men in sweat-soaked button-downs were realizing that the woman they dismissed had stopped holding the system together for them. The best part, they still didn't know what was broken. Because nothing was. It was working exactly as designed, just without me. By 10:13 a.m., they hit the denial phase of collapse. Carson burst into the war room mid-chew on a protein bar, still clinging to the fantasy that if you just reboot harder, the system listens. The new CTO, Greg's replacement, an ex-Meta type with a hoodie as identity problem, had already declared an emergency sync. Whiteboards were chaos. VPN, LDAP, D2S. Acronyms screamed in every direction. Carson jabbed at the dashboard like it personally betrayed him. "This is sabotage," he declared. "Internal breach. Maybe even foreign. Of course. When confused, just blame Russia." Meanwhile, the VP, the one who couldn't make eye contact when they cut me loose, suddenly found his voice. He called twice. Left a voicemail filled with throat clearing and fake warmth. "Maggie? Hey, just checking in. Let's maybe circle back. No pressure, right?" Then came the flowers. Giant tacky sunflowers. Bright blue ribbon. Card said, "Let's talk. No hard feelings. Jay?" I didn't bring them inside. I let the wind take them. They wanted no hard feelings. But I'd spent 2 decades being told my tone was a bit too firm, that I needed to coach upward, that I should smile more during system walkthroughs. I kept their entire network breathing through power outages, cyber attacks, and a CFO who thought BitLocker was a cryptocurrency. And in return, I got pink slips and sunflowers. Nah, don't try to win Maggie Rourke back with a grocery store bouquet. I poured a second cup of revenge-roasted coffee and picked up my personal phone, not to call them, to call Trish. Trish worked in federal logistics compliance at the Department of Transportation. We met at a symposium back in 2014 after I gave a quiet talk on database mirroring during disaster scenarios. She was sharp, cynical, drank her scotch neat, and kept a Rolodex full of people who knew exactly how fragile freight infrastructure really was. "Hey, Trish," I said, glancing at the error logs, stacking up on my diagnostics mirror. "Just letting you know I might be open to some freelance architecture work." She paused, then gave a low whistle. "They finally did it." "Huh?" "Oh, yeah. You just consulting now. Thinking about it. You'll be booked solid in an hour." I wasn't doing this to be vindictive. Not really. I just finally lost the urge to protect people who saw me as an obstacle instead of what I was, the anchor. Carson, bless his clumsy soul, was apparently trying to restore from archive. Too bad I'd revoked clone rights years ago after catching a junior dev copy-pasting one of my hot patches into a public GitHub repo labeled "for learning." Cute. The backups were clean but useless. Snapshots don't breathe without the heartbeat. Me. By noon, breach thresholds were tripped. SLA penalties would auto-trigger by 3 p.m. Legal would get involved, and legal couldn't code their way through a recipe card. Meanwhile, my phone lit up. Calls I wouldn't answer. Messages from strangers. "Maggie, we heard you might be available. Name your rate. You're a legend." Let Carson scream at the printer. I'd already moved on. I wasn't gone. I was just getting started. By the time the sun dipped behind the strip malls off I-45, Carson had gone full meltdown holed up in the Glaston Executive Innovation Chamber, sweating through his startup brand hair gel. Breath shallow from hours of trying to decode logic he didn't understand. They'd opened the vault. Maggie's vault, an internal audit team, 3 senior engineers, 2 compliance analysts, and 1 poor intern whose only crime was being decent at Python, had been combing through my code since noon. By 5:30 p.m., they'd generated 212 pages of documentation. Not one of them knew what it meant. Because here's the thing. My code didn't hide behind tricks or backdoors. It was clean, modular, beautifully annotated, fully compliant and licensed under corporate policy. Every function, every subroutine written like a symphony. No black magic. Just logic so seamless, so deliberate, that unless you lived inside the system, you'd never even know what was missing. They couldn't find the biometric protocol because it wasn't labeled with a neon tag saying "scan here" to prevent digital collapse. I built it like the human liver, essential invisible, and ignored until failure. Failsafe embedded in 19 microservices. Activation handshake only fired when the heartbeat timed out. No big red button. Just one brutal truth. Every morning at 8:00 a.m., sharp, I had to look into that cold lens. Or the beast suffocated. Now it was gasping. In a panic, Carson tried to restore a snapshot from last quarter. He even re-enabled the old DevOps toolkit, loaded it onto a secure build server, and hit deploy thinking he'd MacGyver a miracle. Instead, the server spat out a crisp denial. Clone rights restricted. Root credentials expired. Authorization token M. Rourke. Of course it did. I'd killed the clone ladder 3 years ago after catching them testing my systems in an unsecured sandbox. They ignored my warning, so I baked a legal lock into the root permission stack. Fully compliant, irrevocable, nobody read the policies. They just assumed Maggie would keep humming. Well, hum that, Carson. Around 6:12 p.m., they tried calling Bernie. Poor guys. Bernie's been retired since 2022. I just laughed. Hope they're paying you enough, Bernie, I muttered. That's when it really hit me. I wasn't angry anymore. Not bitter, not anxious, not clinging to old payroll slights or birthday emails no one read. I felt free. For the first time in 2 decades, I wasn't tethered to the beast I built, the sprawling, temperamental, heartbeat-driven monster I had raised from scratch. And now, without me, it thrashed. Not because I sabotaged it, but because they never learned to feed it. When that truth landed, I smiled. Not the tight-lipped smirk I'd worn through years of meetings. A real one. Loose, quiet, earned. Because I hadn't just written the system. I was the system. My name was buried in the compiler notes comment line. 134 of the original kernel, expansi auth at failsafe, me Rourke at day protocol, active no substitutes. I didn't just build the infrastructure, I authored their survival, and now they were reading my gospel like it was written in Latin. Perfect. At 7:42 p.m. came the knock. Not a call, not a desperate Slack ping. A knock. 3 deliberate taps on my front door, weather-warped wood and all. The kind of knock that comes from a man who rehearsed it 10 times on the porch. I didn't rush. Set down my tea, smoothed my sweater, opened the door, slow. There he was, James Tillerson, Executive VP of Strategy and Global Infrastructure. Or as I always called him in my head, the ghost of budget cuts past. He looked like a kid about to ask a pastor's daughter to prom. Blazer wrinkled, eyes bloodshot, one hand gripping his phone like a life raft, the other just hanging there. He cleared his throat like I might have forgotten him. "Maggie?" he said. I didn't answer, just looked at him. Still, calm, waiting. "No, this isn't. It's not ideal just showing up like this." I raised an eyebrow. "But there have been complications." "Oh, have there?" He shifted his weight. "Good. Let him." He tried to smile. Failed. The system's not responding. Vendor chains are offline. Internal authentications are rejecting everything. "Carson thinks it's sabotage." I raised an eyebrow. His mouth twitched. "We're not sure," he added. He cleared his throat again. "But Maggie, look, you don't have to come back. I'm not asking that. I just need you. Just long enough to restore functionality. Reboot the infrastructure. Reset the failsafe, if that's what this is." He lifted his phone like he might show me something, as if pixels could translate desperation. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "Did Carson," I asked slowly, "ever once ask how it worked?" Silence. His lips parted, closed, eyes flicked down, then back up, red-rimmed and guilty. "That boy sat through my meetings playing Sudoku on his phone?" I said, voice low and surgical. "He called me a legacy asset in a Slack thread I still had admin access to. He replaced me with no plan, no handover, just assumed the system would keep humming, like I was a keyboard instead of the keystroke." Tillerson looked down at the porch boards. "He's overwhelmed," he muttered. "Not my problem," I said. He nodded, swallowed. "Understand." I let the silence linger thick and slow, like syrup on a winter morning. Then for a second I softened. Not mercy, just Clarity. I'll think about it. His head snapped up. I didn't say yes. I added. I said I'd think about it. Then I closed the door. Gently. No speech, no drama. Just the final sound of a boundary locking into place. I returned to my chair, picked up my tea, watched the diagnostics mirror pulse its rhythm, heartbeat null, failsafe armed, user MRORC, status undecided. But the decision was coming. By 8:30 the next morning, my inbox looked like a Black Friday checkout line. Every subject line a company I'd once stabilized. Every sender suddenly remembering my name. Are you available? Name your terms. One of them, a rival firm. 2 floors below my old employer's Manhattan HQ. One message came in so blunt it made me laugh into my coffee. We'll match whatever they were paying you and double it if you start today. Cute. But they'd missed the point. This wasn't about salary anymore. It was about sovereignty. The night after Tillerson's pitiful doorstep visit, I opened a folder I hadn't touched in years. Buried deep in my desktop, a dormant LLC registration from 2016. Back when I thought, maybe I'd get out before the burnout hit full steam. I'd named it Firewatch Systems. I liked the image one woman standing guard while the world slept. I never used it. Until now. 2 clicks and $49 later, Firewatch Systems was alive. By noon, I had a basic logo, a 1-page landing site, and 3 NDAs under review. My phone kept buzzing this time, not with panic, but with respect. Professionals, strategic inquiries. Some had met me at conferences. Others had only heard whispers. One recruiter wrote, "We've followed your work since the 2011 breach patch." Damn right they had. It was elegant. Meanwhile, across the river, the machine I'd nurtured was hemorrhaging. An old ops engineer turned anonymous Reddit whistleblower claimed over $12 million lost in under 24 hours. Missed deliveries. SLA breaches. Legal in full scramble mode. Finance tried invoking acts of God like I was some wrathful deity. Well, I did build life into that system. Just not the kind that could be revived with a reboot and wishful thinking. Carson reportedly is now on leave pending internal review. Poor kid probably believed if he smacked the system hard enough, it'd apologize. But the story was spreading. Maggie Rourke wasn't some ghost in the wire. She was a phoenix. I didn't rush. Built my offer sheet, scoped engagements, demanded full architectural autonomy. No more suits with PowerPoint allergies trying to manage me. You wanted me. You got all of me. By day's end, I'd signed a provisional retainer with one of the oldest rail-linked freight consortiums in the Midwest. Legacy systems, ugly back end, total freedom. Big budget, total freedom. The CIO's message was short and sharp. Your reputation precedes you. We're ready when you are. I read it while watching a sparrow hop along the edge of my bird feeder. The world felt slower now. Not because I'd lost my edge, far from it, but because I no longer had to fight to prove I had one. My old company, still silent, still bleeding, still pretending that the woman who engineered their entire operating heartbeat could be replaced with a PowerPoint deck and a corporate shrug. Let them flail. I wasn't angry. I was occupied. The chessboard had widened. And this time, I wasn't a pawn. 7:59 a.m. The diagnostics mirror flickered on just like always. Blue prompt pulsing softly, awaiting biometric confirmation. Scan required by 08:59. I sat still, coffee in hand. Fresh French press, mug warm in my palms, sunlight cutting across the desk like a scalpel. Outside recycling bins lined the curb. A kid strolled by with a golden retriever trailing 6 feet behind. The prompt waited. Patient. Loyal. Still believing I'd never leave it hanging. Like an old dog that didn't know it had been abandoned. Still, I didn't move. 08, 0, 08, 01. Still nothing. No scan. No savior. Then, as if on cue, my phone buzzed once. Then again. Then again. A cascade of notifications spilled across the screen. I didn't even have to lift it. The headline lit up on its own: breaking major U.S. logistics firm files for emergency protection after system collapse. I took a slow sip. Let the bourbon smooth roast settle. The failsafe had done its job. No scan by 8:01 a.m. meant full shutdown. Isolation protocols, quarantined nodes, cloud kill switches, locked down every pipeline like bolts on a sinking freighter. A shutdown they couldn't reverse because they fired the one person with the key. Emergency protection, corporate code for we choked on our own arrogance. And now we need an adult. They tried everything. Offers, appeals, even veiled threats dressed up as collaboration. But it wasn't malice that brought them down. It was assumption. It was assumption that undid them. Assuming the system was theirs. That I was replaceable. That something built out of necessity, line by line, patch by patch, could be operated without reverence. They learned too late the system didn't just run because of me, it ran through me. At 08:03 a.m., a new message landed in my personal inbox. High priority. From the competitor I'd spoken to 2 days earlier, the one with the hideous back end and the beautiful offer. Subject line agreement, plus, closed autonomy, guaranteed. I opened it, reviewed the terms, clean, respectful, full creative control, 6-month minimum, no micromanagement, just results on my terms. I signed it, digitally, quietly, irrevocably. Behind me, the diagnostics mirror still blinked. A terminal with no operator, a system asking for a ghost. I closed the panel for the last time. No music, no send-off. Just silence, the kind that feels earned. I walked to the window, watched the morning shuffle by like nothing had changed. But something had. They built an empire on my shoulders, and then tried to sever the spine, forgetting one fundamental truth. The heart doesn't beat because you demand it to. It beats because it's there. And mine wasn't. Final thought. If you don't know where the heart is, don't try to rip it out. If you've made it this far, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment. Tell me what you would have done in my place. Would you have scanned in one last time, or let it fall like I did? I didn't make this decision lightly. I made it because sometimes walking away is the most powerful thing you can do. If you're fighting to be seen, to be heard, to be respected, don't wait for permission. Build your own terms. And if you've ever been underestimated, like I was, hit that like button and subscribe. Let's prove quiet strength speaks the loudest.